Good evening. Okay. Good evening. Nice to see you. You have one text in front of you there. Tonight we are going to, I think, cut to the heart, hopefully, of Rosh Hashanah. In order to do so, I want to ask it might be considered a controversial question. The question is as follows. Rosh Hashanah, as we know, is a day of din, Yom HaDin. It is a day of judgment. And it is a day that you would assume that in our davening, in our tefillos, there would be some form of acknowledgement of that and a teshuvah, the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, asking for the judge, the king, to judge us leniently. You would expect that, but there's none of that. In fact, not allowed to say the Yud Gimel Midas. That is the 13 Midas, Hashem, Keil, Rachum, V'chanun, Erech HaPayim, the 13 Midas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed to Moshe Rabbeinu, which are the key thing that we use throughout Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, and on Yom Kippurim, we say them again and again and again. And they form the basis of Slichos, and yet they are totally absent. There's something else going on. And if we look at Rosh Hashanah from a biblical perspective, in the Torah, what does the Torah say about Rosh Hashanah? It says, Yom Teruah Yehyeh Lachem. It shall be a day of blowing. That's it, a day of blowing. That's Rosh Hashanah. It's a day of blowing. It doesn't even tell us what to blow. It doesn't. So my question is as follows. There has to be a central mitzvah through which we connect to the essence of the day and achieve what we need to achieve on the day. In Pesach, it's matzah. In Sukkot, it's sitting in the sukkah. Shavuos is a good question what it is. Okay. But what is it on Rosh Hashanah? And the answer is actually quite astounding. The answer is nothing. But it's a very special type of nothing. What is the mitzvah, the only mitzvah? And here I'm going to be, I have to be careful what I say here because I'm outnumbered. But for men there is one mitzvah, min ha-Torah, which is unique to Rosh Hashanah. And that is lishmoya kol shofar, to listen. And that's very hard for men. To listen. But really to listen. I once heard a very beautiful saying, which I remember it usually maybe once a day. See if this resonates with you. There's a massive difference between listening and waiting to speak. How often we're just waiting to speak? The other person is, I don't know, doing something, so there's noise coming out of their mouths and something. And if they will just keep quiet for 1 second, then I can get my words of wisdom in. That's not listening. That's waiting to speak. Listening is something else altogether. It's being in a reflective state. It's being in a passive state. It's being receiving, really genuinely absorbing and thinking, what does that other person want to say? And that is not easy. So, for men, the mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah is lishmoya kol shofar. That's the mitzvah. To listen to the kol shofar. Notice, that will necessitate somebody to blow. But the mitzvah is not blowing. The mitzvah is to listen. That is the mitzvah. To listen. And I don't want to be lynched here, but I've got news for you. For women, it's a time-bound mitzvah, therefore technically you don't need to do that either. I'm not suggesting that you don't. You should, and it's nice and it's good, but technically you don't have that mitzvah. Now, so let's put that question in its glory, all its glory. That means, there has to be, a mitzvah is a spiritual access point through which you access the kedusha of the day, the spiritual journey of the day, and what needs to be achieved. So for men, it's to be passive, and admittedly that is hard, and to genuinely listen, to really listen, lishmaya. But for women, it's not even that. So how does one achieve whatever it is that we need to achieve on Rosh Hashanah? That is actually an incredible question, if I say so myself. It's a day on which our lives depend. So how do we go about that? And again, like I say, in the tefillah, there is one central theme. There is one central theme, and this is really what we need to elaborate on a little bit this evening. We mentioned it a little bit last week, but I think we need to elaborate on it more. You know, perhaps there are many dramatic moments in tefillah, in davening on Rosh Hashanah. There are many dramatic moments, but it is customary that, maybe the first hint of something being a bit different is when we stop in the morning in Shacharis. So normally we start Shacharis is Sheichenad Moroin B'Kodesh Shemai, the few little bits before. But here it is customary that the Chazan stops, El Kodshoi, and then hums a tune from his place. There are various different tunes. There's a number of different tunes, and then he has HaMelech from his place, the king, and then walks to the Amud and then starts Yoshev Al Kisei Ram Benisa. So we set the theme right from then. The story is told of one of the great Hasidic masters, Rabbi Aaron Mikarlin, who was the chazan for all his many Hasidim. And Rosh Hashanah morning, he sings HaMelech, and he promptly faints. His Hasidim assumed he faints because he's overwhelmed by the sanctity, the holiness of the day, and when he came to, he didn't tell them then because you're not allowed to talk at that point. But he must have told them afterwards. He said to them as follows. He told them a story. The Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, at the Churban Bayis Sheni, at the destruction, just before the destruction of the Second Temple, he fakes his own death. It's quite a well-known story, you might know it. He fakes his own death to get away from the zealots. And he comes in front of Vespasian. And he says to Vespasian, "Hail, O Emperor!" So Vespasian wasn't, the Gemara, so Vespasian wasn't the emperor. So Vespasian said to him, "You are Chayav Misa, you really should be put to death for two things. Number one, I'm not the king. And that is treason, I'm not the king. There is a king. And number two," he said, and this is what interests us more than anything else, and this was very beautiful. He said, "If I am the Melech, if as you say, I am the king, well, why didn't you come until now? Where have you been till now? If I'm the king, why have you waited till now to come to me?" So he answers, he says, "I had no choice. The zealots wouldn't let me out." So Aaron Kalin said to himself, he said, "I realized I've come now in front of Hashem," and he's saying, "HaMelech," and Hashem is saying, "Oh, really? I'm a Melech? So where have you been till now?" That's why I fainted. It's quite a powerful idea. That was the way he approached it. But let's think about what that means. There is this image, which we talk about, the Gemara talks about, and it is in the Tefillas as well. One of the highlights, for example, in the Musaf, you have some sheets in front of you. I'm going to translate 3 or 4 lines. I'm going to tell you what this is first of all, and I'm going to translate it. This is from the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who wrote the Mesilas Yesharim and many famous Sfarim. He wrote a small piece specifically on Rosh Hashanah, and it's called Ma'amar HaChochma. That's what it's called, Ma'amar HaChochma. And here he says something quite incredible, which is, if we get this, and hopefully tonight I'll be able to give you a a whole access point, a whole approach to Rosh Hashanah, which is quite revolutionary if you haven't heard it before, and hopefully it's uplifting, it's encouraging, and it's positive. Let's see. So let's start from here. It's on the left-hand column, and I'm just going to translate 3 lines or so. It says, Zochreinu l'chaim. The first thing we say is, the first insertion, the first extra bit we put into the tefillah is we say, Zochreinu l'chaim, Hashem, remember us for life. Hinei, says the Ramchal, Hinei, behold, ha'odom nidoin tchilo al pi ma'asov. Man is initially judged on the basis of their actions, limonois v'tzadikim o b'rashoim, to be judged amongst the righteous or the wicked. Listen to these words carefully. V'zeh hanikro mamash sefer hachayim v'sefer mesim. The Gemara talks famously about there being 3 books. The book of the Rishoyim, the book of the wicked, the book of the righteous, and the Beinonim, those in between. And the Gemara says famously as follows. I'm sure you're familiar with it from your kids and from a million places. On Rosh Hashanah, if we get counted in the book of the Tzaddikim, then we are written and signed and sealed for life. If it's Rishoyim, it's bad news, and Beinonim, you hang about a bit in some sort of limbo. I forgot they abolished it, didn't they? Okay, whatever. You get in some sort of limbo for till Yom Kippurim, and then you get and then it all gets finalized on Yom Kippurim. Fine. The question that all the Rishonim ask is as follows: there are righteous people who die, and there are Rishonim, clearly wicked people who live the life of Riley. In English we say the life of Riley, which is just a saying they have a great old time. So how are we to understand this? This is a question Tosfos asks, the Rishonim ask, and they all deal with it in a number of different ways. The Ramchal here, and this is more of a Kabbalistic approach, but I'm going to show you what it means and how we can apply it. We can absolutely, in fact, not only we can, we must, and it's our only hope. That's the truth. So he says something amazing. He says the book of Tzaddikim is the book of life. The book of the Rishoim, of the wicked, is the book of death. That's it. Now, in case you haven't appreciated the depth of that, I'm going to explain what that means. But in order to do so, I am going to tell you a quick story, or an analogy. It's a moshel. But I want you to imagine a young guy who's working in a massive corporation. He's working in a massive corporation. He is basically the lowest type of employee in the corporate ladder. He is a mailroom boy. Right? So his job is, he takes the post comes in, it's this big office block. There's 80 floors, whatever it is. And he has his trolley, his cart, and he gets all the letters and he sorts them out, and he goes up in the lift and he puts them all on the different floors. That's his job. Now, he fancies himself, he thinks he's really smart. He isn't, but he thinks he's really smart. We'll call him John, just for argument's sake. So, John thinks he's really smart. So he goes around and he notices that there's this guy up on the 77th floor. He's not sure exactly what he does, but he's got a great office. And he's got 3 letters after his name. He doesn't know what it means, but he's got C, E, and O after his name. So he thinks he's probably quite important. And he notices that he keeps sending receipts to the accounts department. And he noticed the following. He noticed that this guy, who's this fellow up there, he flew first class to New York. And he sees an invoice goes to the accounts department for 7,000 euros for his ticket, and the accountant sends back a check, and he gets 7,000, and he gets a limousine to pick him up at the airport, another few $100, whatever it is, and he stays in a suite in the Four Seasons, and he gets that paid, and he goes into takes in a show on 5th Avenue, 7th Avenue, whatever it is, and he gets paid for that, and he goes to the best restaurants, and And he gets it all paid. And he thinks, okay, I wonder what this is about. And then he notices that at the end of the month, the guy still gets his salary check besides for that. So he calls up his wife, John says, right, I found a great loophole here in the company. Max out the credit cards, we're going to New York. So he goes to New York. He does exactly what the other guy did. He flies first class. He stays in the Four Seasons. He gets a limousine to pick him up. He goes to the same restaurant. He goes to the thing. He comes back and he finds one of these forms, betrag, whatever they call it now here, whatever, and he signs it in, with Unterschrift, and this, and that, and that thing, and it's signed and triple dated and whatever. They're not going to get him on any technicalities, and he hands it in to the accountant's office. And the accountant looks at him and says, John, what's this? Well, he said, it's my, the receipts for my... He says, and what possesses you to think? What gives you any idea to think that I'm going to pay for that? Why should the company... Why does it enter your mind that the company... So he said, well, that guy up there, he did exactly the same thing, and I noticed that he got paid, and he also got a salary check. So, hello? So the guy says, oh, you fool. You fool. That guy is the boss. The company is trying to create a transatlantic merger with another big company. And he's the only guy that could pull off this deal. He did not want to go to New York. We had to tell him, we told him, you're the only guy that can do this. But you're going and you're representing the company. So you're representing the company, we insist you fly first class. You wine and dine the clients because you are representing, and he pulled off the deal, and that is going to create a revenue stream for the company of tens of millions of dollars in the years to come. So the $50,000 or whatever, that's chicken feed. We're quite happy to pay that. And of course he gets his salary on top of that. You, on the other hand, you went for yourself. Nothing to do with the company. Why on earth should we pay? And in essence, that is what Rosh Hashanah is. Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of this whole project called existence. That's what it is. The world was created on the 25th of Elul. We don't celebrate that date. The Ran, Rabbeinu Nissim, writes that in Barcelona they would get up early in the morning on the 25th of Elul to start saying Slichos. That's where it comes from. Rosh Hashanah is day 6 of creation, when man was created. Man who has a brain, who has the ability, who has Bechira, it's the anniversary of free choice, and he can make choices. Choices about meaning, about value, about purpose, what to do. An autonomous moral creature, with a tselem Elokim, with a brain, with a moral compass, with an neshama that can really, which is the point of all of existence. And on the anniversary of the project, HaKadosh Baruch Hu reallocates expense accounts. This has nothing to do with reward. This is not about reward. This is not about salary. Salary, reward, I'll tell you a quick story because it's one of my favorite stories. It's a true story, but it gives us a whole different perspective. The Gemara says, Schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka. There is no reward for mitzvahs in this world. And I heard from Rabbi Solomon Shlita, when he said the story of the Chafetz Chaim, the Ponovitcher Rav, and the Chafetz Chaim. There was a meeting to try and generate fundraise for the yeshivas, the kollel, the usual story, low on funds and everything. And the Ponovitcher Rav went to the Chafetz Chaim after Shachris and said, Rebbe, I've solved the problem, we can all go home. What do you mean? He said, I made a deal with Hashem today. So what's the deal? I said I would give up the sechar, the reward for this morning putting on tefillin, and in exchange, Hashem should give the however many billions of dollars are needed to support all the Torah institutions until the coming of Mashiach. Job done, we can go home. So the Chafetz Chaim said to him, I guarantee you Hashem did not take your deal, and I'll tell you why. And he told him the following story, which I will jazz up to make it a bit more modern. Bill Gates Jr. or Jeff Bezos Jr. whoever, take your pick, goes to the corner store to buy a Hershey bar or something, and he takes with him an Amazon check, which is signed for $500 million. And he goes to the guy, and the guy says, have you got money? I need 50 cents for the chocolate bar. He says, no, but you know what? I've got this check signed by my father, Jeff. It's good for $500 million. There you go. What does the shopkeeper do? So if he's honest, he will very slowly and very regretfully tear that check up and give it back to him and say, kid, you know what? Take the chocolate bar, come back. I think you're good for 50 cents. Come back tomorrow, bring me the 50 cents. If he's dishonest, he'll take the check. You offered HaKadosh Baruch Hu a check for $500 million for a candy bar. You have to understand, says Reb Dessler, Schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka, it means there is no currency. Not Hashem does not or does not want to repay in this world for mitzvahs. There is no currency. He would be shortchanging you. A mitzvah is eternity. Take all the money in the world. It's short of eternity. If he accepts it, that means he's shortchanging you. The currency, you have to wait to get repaid in an environment and in a currency that is eternal. Down here, there is no reward for mitzvahs, which raises the big problem we say every day in the second paragraph of Shema. If you serve Hashem with all your heart, then what happens? The rains will fall, the crops will grow, and everything will be hunky-dory. If, however, your hearts go astray, then the rains won't fall. Whoa, slow down. I thought there is no reward. The Rambam asks this question in the end of Hilchos Tshuva, and the answer he gives is what I just told you. This is not about salary. This is about expenses. And that's what Rosh Hashanah is. Rosh Hashanah is not about what you have done. It's not about what you're going to do. Rosh Hashanah is about who are you. And the incredible opportunity of Rosh Hashanah is that you can utterly change your identity in a split second. And I'll explain what that means and how that works. That is the secret. That is what Rosh Hashanah is. Rosh Hashanah, again, it has nothing to do with the past. Rosh Hashanah, let me try and explain that and elaborate on this a bit. And this is what the Ramchal means. This is what the Ramchal means. This is a much more Kabbalistic, it's based on the Ramami Pano and others. It's a whole different approach. I'll tell you the Gemara. I'll prove it to you. The Gemara says as follows. A guy who has never done a mitzvah in his life comes out of McDonald's, he's wiping the crumbs of his Big Mac, off his lips for his supper. He sees a nice Beis Yaakov girl, and he goes up to her and he says, this is a Gemara in Kiddushin. He goes up to her and he says, Harei at mekudeshes li al menos sha'ani tzadik gamur. Behold, he gives her a ring or whatever, I don't know. Behold, you are betrothed to me on the strict understanding and the condition that I am a tzaddik gamor. This guy has never done a mitzvah in his life. What's the halacha? Do you know what the halacha is? He has to give her a get misafik. There is a possibility, we don't know. There is a possibility that he actually is a tzaddik. And therefore, he has to go to Beis Din and give her a get misafik. Says Rashi, why? How can that be? Says Rashi, Shema hirher teshuva beliboy. Perhaps he had a moment of utter sincerity and real teshuva. Maybe. It's a possibility. Whoa! 1 minute, ask all the Mefarshim. So what, you have a thought of teshuva, but you and I all know teshuva has conditions. You have to have regret, you have to have vidui, you have to articulate, you have to have a Kabbalah, you have to undertake for the future, you have to stop sinning. We'll talk about that more when we get towards Yom Kippurim. Teshuva is a process. There are different parts to it. We are seeing from this Gemara there is something else as well. Let's go back over that Gemara. Harei at mekudeshes li, behold you are betrothed to me, almanos she'ani tzaddik, on the understanding that I am a tzaddik. There is a possibility that the biggest Rasha in the world ever can theoretically utterly change his designation and identity in an instant and become labeled tzaddik. Says Rashi, how and why? Perhaps he had a moment of sincere, utter teshuvah. It is possible. That's all it needs. Shema hira teshuvah b'liboy. So now let's go back. Let's go back to Rosh Hashanah. Let's go back to this Ramchal. And now we'll understand. And this is the secret of what Rosh Hashanah is about. Hayoim haras olam, we say. Hayoim haras olam. I was told I didn't sing enough last week. Okay. Hayoim haras olam. Right, we say today is, well, we say the birthday of the world, but it isn't really. And here's an interesting thing. We say haras, herayon, hirhur. Do you hear the connection? Do you hear what we just said before? We said maybe the guy hirher teshuvah. The word hirher is to think, laharher. Herayon is to be pregnant, it's conception, which by the way is the same as concept. An idea. Because what is it? It is something that seemingly comes almost from nowhere, a tiny thing, and then it develops. Rosh Hashanah, the Ribbono Shel Olam recreates the world anew. The most critical moment in a child's life is moment of conception. Because that is the moment that all the genetic material is laid down. And if, God forbid, something goes wrong at that moment, it's a problem. If everything is good at that moment, that's fine. Because everything is there. Everything is there in tiny, tiny detail. All that happens later is the unfolding and the developing and the revealing and the growing of that which is already there. But it's that critical moment, the laying down of that, the creation, that it's all there. And that happens again on Rosh Hashanah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, and you choose your own spiritual DNA at that moment in time. That's what happens at Tkiyas Shofar. That's really what's happening. In Aseret Simei Tshuva, we'll have to deal with the past. And that's why the miraculous can happen. Rosh Hashanah, Nifkado Sarah, Nifkado Chana. The miraculous can happen because the past is irrelevant. The Ribbono Shel Olam looks at his creation again and says, who are you? Are you a mailroom boy or are you a CEO? You decide. It's got to be real, it's got to be deep, it's got to be sincere. It only needs to be momentary, but it needs to be absolute. That the Ribbono Shel Olam does this sonogram, he looks right into your soul. There's no hiding. It's a moment. It's frightening because it's a moment where naked and true and it's real. And we need to all search through Rosh Hashanah for that moment of reality. And to declare who we are. We decide. Are you a tzaddik or are you a Rasha? That's what it means. That's what the Ramchal means. The book of being alive does not mean physically alive. Alive means you are connected to the source of life. That's what it means. Rishoim b'chayehem kruyim meisim. Rishoim, even though they may be physically alive, dead man walking. You've heard the expression? Dead man walking. I think it might actually come back to Adam Harishon. You want to hear this? Don't know if it's Adam Harishon. Hashem says, on the day that you eat from the Eitz Hadas, you will die. On the day that you will eat it, you will die. What happened? He lived. He heard Hashem mishalech b'soich hagan. Meis hoilech. Dead man walking. That's it. You've disconnected yourself from the source of reality. You may physically continue to live. In Kabbalistic terms, your ruach has departed. Yes, you're alive in the same way a cockroach is alive or a cat is alive. You're alive. You've got organs, blood is pumping, but you are disconnected. You are dead. You're disconnected from the source of Chaim. And we say to the Ribbono Shel Olam on Rosh Hashanah, we have to mean it. I don't want to be a mailroom boy anymore. I want to be a CEO. I'm a team player. I get why we're here. we're here, this is your world, and I have the courage, and it takes courage, it takes bravery to step over the threshold into, brave new world is the wrong, but into Hashem's world. And you decide. That's why it has nothing to do with the past, and that's why the no mitzvah is needed. What happened on that day? Let's go back to that day. What happened on that day? That was a day when Adam HaRishon was given one job, one task only, and that was don't. He wasn't given a job to do. He was only given a job not to do. And we need, on that day, once again, not to do. Just to stand in submission and to listen and to accept. That's all we need to do. Lishmaya. Women don't even need to do that. Just don't do malacha. That's what this is all about. That's the central theme of Malchus. So on the one hand, it's terrifying. It is terrifying. It is frightening. This is the moment that our label and our identity is being cemented and solidified, which we will take with us for the next year, until next Rosh Hashana. We have then a label. You can't change it afterwards. Virtually impossible. It's laid down for the next year. And the way that Hashem looks at us, expense account, not salary, expense account. Rabbeinu Shalom, if I am a team player, I need to be healthy. Do you know why I need to be healthy? Because I'm your star employee. I need a bit of money because I need to produce for the team. I'm not living for moi. And it's easy to say the words. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, how can you know that you don't fool yourself? Like, how with all
you can know. You can know. You need to. We have a whole day. You have a whole day. Different people. Ideally, this should be at the moment of Kriyas Shofar. That's really, ideally, this is what you're meant to think about, besides for being Mekayim the mitzvah. Let me just finish this. Let me try and finish it. I'll gladly take questions, okay? And that's why I think it does go a little bit deeper than this, because this is the day of the ideal. This is a day that, according to some, didn't even happen. Whether Hashem created the world on Tishri or Nisan, okay, we'll leave that aside. But let's assume what was required of man. I mean, let's put it into different terms. Very often, the hardest thing of all, and for men sometimes even more than for women, is to accept. And what we don't realize is the greatest manifestation of self is when you choose not to do something. That is the deepest manifestation of self. Because whenever you do something, you can't do something on your own. You need Hashem to do something. But not to do something, that's why it says, Hakol b'dei shamayim, everything is in the hands of heaven, besides for the fear of heaven. It doesn't say besides for the love of Hashem. It's besides for the fear. Fear is something that tells you not to do. When you make a moral choice not to. Adam HaRishon was created. In fact, everything, let me put this into you in one sentence. All of creation, what was the purpose of all of creation? All of creation was so that man would withstand this one temptation. And he just couldn't. The idea that space and time and everything was created just so that I should resist the temptation to perfect your world. I have to accept that your world is perfect. What does that mean, your world is perfect? What does perfect mean? It is perfect for the purpose for which it is created, to be an environment for free choice. That's what it means. To say that something is perfect means it's perfect for the purpose for which it is designed. And that is the hardest thing of all. How many from people go through the motions? But are we really a mailroom boy, or are we a CEO? Are we really living our life for our own agenda? Or do we really accept and know and understand and live in His world? And this does not contradict Maslow's self-actualization, because this is your self-actualization. That's the depth of it. This is how you as a neshama manifest. And you change your identity in that one split second. That is what Rosh Hashanah is all about. Everything changes. You change your whole designation. You become a tzaddik in a second. But it has to be real, it has to be deep. And you've got a few hours in the day to reach that point. Whether it's the tunes that help you or the reflection, but somehow we have to. Because then that's set. Then you're a tzaddik. That's it. Your designation is set. And you are treated differently throughout the year. We hope we somehow need to get there. I'm going to stop there for tonight. A little bit shorter, but you wanted to ask. Anybody wants to ask?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you said of the moment where it's decided.